The first civilizations and empires, prehistory to AD 500. Why it matters. For hundreds of thousands of years, human beings survived by hunting, fishing, and gathering food and supplies in an often hostile environment. In the space of a few thousand years, human beings began to master the art of growing food crops. As more food was produced, the population grew, and people began to live in cities, form governments, and develop writing and art. Historians call this process the beginning of civilization. Chapter 1. The First Humans, Prehistory to 3500 BC. What is civilization? These cave paintings in Lascaux, France, illustrate the animals early people hunted 17,000 years ago during the Ice Age. Images like these give us glimpses into the life of early humans. In this chapter, you will learn how humans gradually shifted from temporary to permanent settlements and began establishing civilizations. How do you think the first humans got their food? How would you define civilization? Early humans. Where did early humans live? How did they live, and what happened to them? To answer these questions, scientists study the evidence left by prehistoric people. Although researchers have new and better ways of studying the past, there is much we still do not know. Before history. Main idea. Scientists use fossils and artifacts as clues to how early humans lived. History and you. What would people in the future think of American culture based on what we leave behind? Historians rely mostly on documents or written records to create their pictures of the past. However, no written records exist for the prehistory of humankind. In fact, prehistory means the time before writing was developed. The story of prehistoric humans depends on archaeological and, more recently, biological evidence. Archaeologists and anthropologists use this information to create theories about our early past. Archaeology and anthropology. Archaeology is the study of past societies through analysis of what people left behind. Archaeologists dig up and examine artifacts, objects made by humans. Artifacts may be tools, weapons, art, and even buildings made by early humans. Anthropology is the study of human life and culture. Culture includes what people wear, how they organize their society, and what they value. Anthropologists use artifacts and human fossils to create a picture of people's everyday lives. Fossils are rock-like remains of biological organisms, a leaf imprint, or a skeleton. Archaeologists and anthropologists have developed scientific methods to carry out their work. They excavate or dig up land at sites around the globe to uncover fossil remains of early humans, ancient cities, burial grounds, and other objects. The examination and analysis of these remains give archaeologists a better understanding of ancient societies. By examining artifacts such as pottery, tools, and weapons, for example, these scientists learn about the social and military structures of a society. By analyzing bones, skins, and plant seeds, they are able to piece together the diet and activities of early people. One of the most important and difficult jobs of both archaeologists and anthropologists is dating their finds. Dating artifacts and fossils. Dating human fossils and artifacts helps scientists understand when and where the first humans lived. One method used to determine age is radiocarbon dating. All living things absorb a small amount of radioactive carbon, or C14, from the atmosphere. After a living thing dies, it slowly loses C14. By measuring the amount left in an object, a scientist can figure its age. This method is accurate for objects no more than about 50,000 years old. For objects dating back to 200,000 years ago, scientists can make relatively precise measurements using thermoluminescence. This measures the light given off by the electrons trapped in the soil surrounding fossils and artifacts. Microscopic and biological analyses of organic remains, such as blood, hairs, and plant tissues left on tools and weapons, give scientists still more information. Such analyses have shown that blood molecules may survive millions of years. This recent scientific discovery is especially useful in telling us more about humans, their use of tools, and the animals they killed. Ancient deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, is providing new information on human evolution. The analysis of plant remains on stone tools yields evidence on the history of farming. All of these techniques give us insight into the lives of early peoples. Early development. In recent decades, modern science has produced a clear picture of how early humans developed. Pieces of the puzzle are still missing, however. When a new skull or skeleton is unearthed, scientists may find that they have to revise their ideas about prehistoric human life. Hominids to Homo sapiens. What is a hominid? A hominid was a human-like creature that walked upright. The earliest hominids lived in Africa 4 million years ago. They existed for millions of years, slowly changing over time. Louis and Mary Leakey spent most of their lives searching for clues about early human life. They made a dramatic discovery of a skeleton at Olduvai Gorge in East Africa. According to their son, primary source. My father was ill that morning, so my mother set out alone, but found very little until just before noon, when she noticed a scrap of enormously thick bone protruding from beneath the surface. She instantly realized that it was part of a hominid skull, and that 2 teeth were embedded in the rock just above it. Elated, she drove back to camp to tell my father, Louis. As he remembered it, she rushed in crying, "I've got him! I've got him! I've got him!" Richard Leakey, time, July 17, 1959. Leakey's discovery of a hominid in 1959 was the oldest at that time, about 1.8 million years old. For decades, scientists assumed these earliest of upright creatures must also have used tools. In 1974, Donald Johanson challenged this theory when his team found a new skeleton in Ethiopia. Johanson nicknamed the female skeleton Lucy and suggested that she was the common ancestor for several types of early human life. Scientists called this type of hominid Australopithecus, or southern ape. It flourished in eastern and southern Africa. In a 1991 interview, Johanson explained why Lucy changed the ideas of many scientists about hominids that walked upright. Primary source. People felt that there were a number of evolutionary changes which all went together, that our ancestors stood up to free their hands so they could make and use stone tools. In order to make and use stone tools, they had to have large brains. Here comes Lucy, about 3.5 million years old. Very small brain, and we have never found any stone tool, stone artifacts associated with her species. Yet she is walking upright. So it appears that walking on 2 legs precedes by perhaps as much as 1.5 million years the manufacture of stone tools and the expansion of the brain. Donald Johanson, 1991 interview. From 2.5 to 1.6 million years ago, a more advanced hominid developed with a somewhat larger brain. This hominid was named Homo habilis, meaning handy human. Homo habilis may have used stone tools. The earliest remains of this hominid were discovered near Olduvai Gorge. Another hominid, Homo erectus, upright human, existed from 1.8 million to 100,000 years ago. Although other hominids walked on two legs, Homo erectus had arms and legs in modern human proportion. Remains in Asia show that Homo erectus was probably the first hominid to leave Africa. Around 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens emerged. Homo sapiens, wise human, showed rapid brain growth and mastered fire. Two kinds of early humans descended from Homo sapiens: Neanderthals and Homo sapiens sapiens. In the Neanderthal, a valley in Germany, the earliest remains of Neanderthals or Neanderthals were found. They probably lived between 100,000 BC and 30,000 BC. Other Neanderthal remains have been found in Europe and Turkey. Besides using many kinds of stone tools, European Neanderthals made their clothes from animal skins. Neanderthals seem to be the first early people to bury their dead. According to some scholars, burying the dead indicates a belief in an afterlife. Homo sapiens sapiens. The second group descended from Homo sapiens is Homo sapiens sapiens, meaning wise human. These are the first to have an anatomy similar to people today. Physical evidence suggests that Homo sapiens sapiens appeared in Africa between 150,000 and 200,000 years ago. They probably spread out of Africa to other parts of the world about 100,000 years ago, replacing populations of earlier hominids in Europe and Asia. This is referred to as the out-of-Africa theory, or replacement theory. Another theory, the multi-regional model, states that the development from earlier hominids to anatomically modern humans occurred in different locations in Africa, Asia, and Europe. The timing and reasons for early human migrations are still debated among scholars. By 30,000 BC, Homo sapiens sapiens had replaced the Neanderthals. The Neanderthals died out, possibly as a result of conflicts with Homo sapiens sapiens. The spread of these first modern humans was a slow process. Over many thousands of years, Homo sapiens sapiens spread over the globe as they searched for food and new hunting grounds. In a whole generation, they may have moved only 2 or 3 miles. Over hundreds of thousands of years, this was enough to populate the world. Today, all humans, whether they are Europeans, Australian Aborigines, or Africans, belong to the same subgroup of human beings. The Paleolithic Age. One of the basic distinguishing features of the human species is the ability to make tools. The term Paleolithic Age is used to designate the early period of human history, approximately 2,500,000 to 10,000 BC, in which humans used simple stone tools. Paleolithic is Greek for Old Stone, and the Paleolithic Age is sometimes called the Old Stone Age. Hunting and gathering. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans relied on hunting and gathering for their daily food. Paleolithic peoples had a close relationship with their environment. They came to know what animals to hunt and what plants to eat. They gathered wild nuts, berries, fruits, wild grains, and green plants. Around the world, they hunted and ate various animals, including buffalo, horses, bison, and reindeer. In coastal areas, fish and shellfish provided a rich source of food. The Paleolithic way of life. Early humans were able to sustain themselves through the use of stone tools. To make such tools, early people used very hard stones, such as flint. They used one stone to chip away parts of another, creating an edge. Hand axes of various kinds, pointed tools with one or more cutting edges, were the most common. Hand axes eventually were set in wooden handles, making them easier to use. By attaching wooden poles to spear points and hardening the tips in fire, humans created spears to kill large animals. Over the years, Paleolithic hunters developed better tools. The invention of the spear and later the bow and arrow made hunting much easier. Harpoons and fishhooks made of bone increased the catch of fish. Early humans used sharp-edged tools to cut up plants, dig up roots, and cut branches to build simple shelters. Scraping tools were used to clean animal hides for clothing and shelter. By the end of the Paleolithic period, there is evidence of such refined tools as bone needles. These needles could be used for making nets and baskets and even sewing hides together for clothing. Because Paleolithic people were hunters and gatherers, they had to follow animal migrations and vegetation cycles. Paleolithic humans were nomads, people who moved from place to survive. Archaeologists and anthropologists think these nomads probably lived in small groups of 20 or 30. Hunting depended on careful observation of animal behavior patterns and demanded group cooperation for success. The roles of men and women. The main job of Paleolithic peoples was finding enough to eat. Both men and women were responsible for finding the food needed for survival. Paleolithic parents passed on their practices, skills, and tools to their children to ensure the survival of later generations. Since women bore and raised children, they probably stayed closer to camp. They played an important role in acquiring food by gathering berries, nuts, roots, and grains. Women taught the children which foods were edible. They trapped small animals and kept the camp safe. In the constant search for food, men had to travel far from camp to hunt herds of large animals. What the women caught and gathered had to feed the group if there was no game. Because both men and women were responsible for finding and acquiring the food needed to sustain life, many scientists believe there was equality between them. It is likely that both men and women made decisions that affected the activities of the Paleolithic group. Adapting to survive. Groups of Paleolithic people, especially those groups who lived in cold climates, found shelter in natural caves. Over a period of time, people created new types of shelter as well. Perhaps most common was a simple structure made of wood poles or sticks covered with animal hides. In places where wood was scarce, they might use the large bones of mammoths to build frames that were then covered by animal hides. The systematic use of fire made it possible to provide a source of both light and heat within both the caves and the handmade structures in which they lived. Use of fire. Another important result from the migration of early hominids was the use of fire. As early hominids moved from the tropics into colder regions, they needed to adjust to new climate conditions. In response, Homo erectus first learned to make fires. Archaeologists have discovered the piled remains of ashes in caves that prove that Paleolithic people used fire systematically as long ago as 500,000 years. At a Homo erectus site in northern China, remnants of hearths, ashes, charcoal, and charred bones have been dated to 400,000 years ago. Fire not only gave warmth, but kept wild animals away from the campsite. Armed with spears, hunters used fire to flush out wild pigs for the kill. People gathered around the fire to trade stories and to cook. Cooked food tasted better, lasted longer, and was easier to chew and digest, in the case of some plants, such as wild grains. So it seems likely that nutrition improved. Scholars believe that the discovery of a means for starting fires occurred independently throughout the world, in different places at different times. Archaeologists lack concrete evidence on how early people started fires. They have been able to examine the methods used by traditional peoples. On that basis, archaeologists deduce that the earliest humans used friction to start fires. Eventually, some Paleolithic peoples developed sturdy, drill-like wooden devices to start fires. Other early humans discovered that a certain stone, iron pyrites, gave off a spark when struck against a rock, and that spark could ignite dry grass or leaves. The Ice Ages. Having fire to create a source of heat was especially important when Ice Age conditions descended on the Paleolithic world. The most recent Ice Age began about 100,000 BC and ended in about 8,000 BC. During this time, sheets of thick ice covered large parts of Europe, Asia, and North America. As sea levels went down, people migrated across land bridges that had not existed before. Ice Age conditions posed a serious threat to human life, and the ability to adapt was crucial to human survival. The use of fire, for example, reminds us that early humans sometimes adapted not by changing themselves to better fit their environment, but by changing the environment. Creating art. The importance of art to human life is basic. Art existed even in prehistory among the hunters and gatherers of the Paleolithic Age. In 1940, a bad storm near Lascaux in southern France uprooted a large tree, revealing a cave. French children playing nearby soon found the cave and the paintings inside. Many of these paintings had deteriorated, but scientists use special tools to determine what is being depicted, such as horses, bulls, and stags. Another famous discovery was made in Spain in 1879, when a little girl wandered into a cave on her grandfather's farm near Altamira. Like many other caves covered with Paleolithic art, the cave near Altamira shows evidence that the paintings may have been created over a span of time, not all at once. Scientists can date the art based on pigments from the paintings. In 1994, Jean-Marie Chauvet and his friends discovered paintings in southern France. Carbon dating showed works at Chauvet Cave were nearly twice as old as those at Lascaux and Altamira. But the drawings were more advanced. Scholars had assumed the opposite, that the earliest art would be crude and gradually would become more detailed. Using stone lamps filled with animal fat to light the caves, early artists painted with fingers, twigs, and even blew paint through hollow reeds. They mixed mineral ores with animal fat to make red, yellow, and black paint. A variety of realistically painted animals cover the caves. Few humans appear in these paintings, and when they do appear, they are drawn as stick-like figures. This has led some scholars to think the work was done for a magical or religious ritual to bring success in hunting. Others believe the paintings were made simply to please the eye. Recent discoveries of art by early humans show that prehistoric art existed in other areas of the world. Early housing. What a house looks like has much to do with where it is located, when it was built, and what materials were available. Jiaokaodianzhen Cave in China shows evidence of use from around 700,000 to around 200,000 years ago. Pincevant in modern-day France shows how early humans lived in northern Europe at the end of the Ice Age, around 13,000 years ago. And Çatalhöyük in modern-day Turkey was an early farming village from 6700 to 5700 BC.